Dear viewers, welcome to this new course Database Management System. In first of this series, we are going to talk about what is DBMS. Go and talk about what is DBMS. First, we should understand what is data, and then what is database, and then we finally talk about what is the management system we have for the database. First, we talk about what is data. As we all know, the world is filled with so much of data. We are the fourth industrial revolution, and there is so much of data is being generated in every walks of life. Wherever we walks in, whether it is a social media or it's a traffic or it's a mobile phone, wherever it is, there is a huge data is being generated. So what is the definition for data? Data is any fine-grained information or any information, any small piece of information that can be stored in the computer memory. So the data can be called as the raw data. The data has to be smoothened to become a database. So once the data is ready to store in the computer memory, and if you're willing to store the data permanently, then we need to go for database. There are so much of things we need to understand what is database. What other thing that we store on the computer memory can be a database? No. Then what is a database? What is the difference between file system and database system? In what way they are dissimilar with one another? In what way they correlate with one another? So in this series we are going to talk about what is data and what is database in particular. The database is a storage where we store your data. As I said, data means any piece of information that we get from the user that is willing to store in the computer memory for the period of so much of years. If you want to preserve and safeguard your data for safety and security for assessing purpose, then you have to save your data in the database. First important thing you need to understand on database is the data is permanent. If you think that your data should be permanent, it is easy for access and it should be well protected, and it is give room for high interoperability, and the scalability of the database should be somewhat robust. If you think that your data falls in these categories, then surely you should go for database. The name of the database is so different in many books. The database name can be called as a relation if you talk about relational algebra. The same name can be called as table if you are using SQL. So the name of the thing is being changed from place to place. We are going to reveal that in the coming sessions, and before that we need to understand what is DBMS. What is the role of database management system? So what is a DBMS? DBMS is a software. First understand, DBMS is a software like Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, Sybase. These are all the examples of database management system. The role of the database management system is to facilitate the operation for our data. In what way the operating system facilitates the operations between the user and the system, same way here the DBMS facilitates the operation that is happening between the user and the memory. So database is a place where we store your data. As I said before, if you want to store your data permanently at one place, then we need to have a database, it's a memory. And if you want to interact with the memory, we need to have a DBMS, a software to deal with that access. And there are so much of external users. It may be an application, or it may be an interface, or it may be a user, or it may be an app, whatever it may be, or it may be another DBMS, whatever it may be. So the user wants to access the database, then you need to use any one of the existing DBMS software. It may be an SQL, it may be DB2, it may be Postgres. So you can use any other DBMS product. So understand in this lecture, DBMS is a software. We have to use any one of the software. Mostly we use SQL, Oracle, and if you want to go by open source software, then you have to use MySQL. It is so open, but if you want to use so complex operation, in such case MySQL is not so affordable. So it is highly suggested to use Oracle or SQL Thereby you can enhance your operations and the performance of the system is highly scalable. That is a high recommendation we have over here. Examples of the database is customer. Suppose if you want to safeguard your customer and the customer details, then you should have a database, because every customer is very important to any organization. Customer is an asset to any organization. So the organization wants to keep track of their customers, what they buy each time, what is the activity they are doing in the store. So if you want to preserve the data permanently, then you need to have a database. So in this, the right hand corner, you can see there are many shapes, many layers, right? We are talking about database in this layer. There are many databases. You can take any database, right? The relational database or Oracle database or object database or multimedia database. You can have any sort of database, but here we are talking about relational database. So what are all the qualities what are all the properties we have for the customer? Customer ID, the name of the customer, and the last name for the customer. What is the contact number, which is very important to keep track of them, to send messages, to send them updates. And it's an SSN number. Here in India it is called as Aadhaar number, and which city he belongs, and what is the email ID. So you can have so much of attributes. These are all the properties defining the customer. Now I have a question for you to think. Suppose here the customer has so much of properties: customer ID, first name, last name, contact number, SSN, and city. What would happen if the customer has only customer name? Is it enough for a customer to have only one attribute, one property? Customer have only customer name. Can I store the customer name alone in the database? At what situation we need to have a customer table? At what situation we need to have a table? This is a highly critical question to deal with at this juncture. Before we go and talk about database, first we should understand at which situation we need to have a database. The database is very critical and very easy to operate. Like I ask a question, if the table has only one attribute, can I have a database for that table? No, the answer is no. Sometimes I have two attributes. Can I store in a database? Again, the answer is no. I have 5 attributes. Can I store that in a database? Again, the answer is no. Then what is database? Whenever you think that the data that you store in the database is growing or it's shrinking, the database should be always accessible. The database should be always updatable. If you think that you want to store your data permanently, after that you are not going to do any changes in the database. Say for example, I have a customer, I have only 100 customers. After that the customer details is not going to be updated. No more customer is going to be added and no more customer is going to be detained or removed. There is no activity on the database, and that database is stored only for safety reason. That's it. There is no other operation we are going to deal with the database. No transaction is going to happen on the database. In that case, you can better store in some file format. If you think that the database has the data is no operations, no search operations, no access operations, no update operations, simply they called as CRUD operation. CRUD stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete. Drop. Update in the sense it deals with delete, update, and modify. That is called what update. So if it is not dealing with any other operations other than storing only, then it is highly suggested not to store in a database. If you are willing to store your data in the database, that means you are agreeing to do the changes on the database. You are agreeing to modify the values in the database. You are agreeing to share your data to the database to some people. And you can restrict. Yes, you have all the privileges to restrict that the database can be read only to others. The database can be only updatable for others. What are all the conditions you want to give to others? Yes, you can do that. It's all your privileges. But what is the point that we need to emphasize over here is, please understand that database must grow or the database must shrink. It should not be fixed. It should not be a constant entity. There must be some activity on the database that you have created. So that is what we have highlighted, a customer, and their customer ID is unique, is a primary key which uniquely refers the particular customer. In what way the student registration number has been identified for the different students, here the customer. We will discuss in the coming sessions what is keys and constraints in elaborate manner. And here this is the database system. Once we have a DBMS software and we have a memory, what is so important is we need to have application programs which interacts between these two. The application program is very interactable. It requires to have a proper access between the software and the memory. For all the cases, the application programs are critical. If you go to service-oriented architecture, there they call this a middleware. The application program is a middleware. We have to write a program to access the data through the DBMS. So in the next section, we are going to talk about what is the role between DBMS and operating system, in what way the application program is helpful for dealing with this activity. I hope you would have a good understanding on the topic that we explained, and I believe that you have a good understanding of what is a database and what is not a database. And the next section, we are going to deal with what is the connection between DBMS and operating system. Is there any correlation between these two? Happy learning. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you.